Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Locker Room Podcast.
Yeah, happy Sunday to everybody out there. This is Locker Room on ESPN Radio. Kirk Morrison, he's Antoine Walker. She is Chiney Ogwumike. This show is always interactive. You can tweet us your comments, questions, thoughts at Kirk Morrison on Twitter, at Walker Antoine 8, at Chiney 321. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Coming off Thursday's big NBA draft with a lot of talent coming into the NBA from the college ranks overseas. But I think what really stole the show was about a trade that happened, I think, fairly early in the draft. One that kind of took some people as the rumors started to fly. And the next thing you know, we're seeing things on the bottom of the ticker, the bottom screen, saying that there has been a trade proposed as the Chicago Bulls were going to ship Jimmy Butler and the number 16 pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and the number 7 pick. When that trade was first proposed, everybody was saying, uh-oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I'll let Tim Legler talk about it just a little bit. Our own Tim Legler was on Freddie and Fitz, and this is what he had to say about that trade.
The Chicago Bulls have indicated that's the best offer they had. So for people in Chicago and around the league to think, you're going to get back a young 25 and under star or a budding star plus a top, 5 to 7 first round pick and maybe another pick, which is what people thought he was worth. Well, clearly I think that wasn't the case because they would have gotten at it if that was true. Now, Jimmy Butler's been around for 6 years. He was on a 500 team this year. That most nights when I watched them play were a very underachieving team, had no leadership. I thought they really played like dogs a lot of times that I watched them. So for people to think that Jimmy Butler is this superstar player, he's got a lot more to prove in this league to me.
Yeah, that's Tim Legler giving us straight talk wireless right there. Nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. I'll start with you on this one, Antoine. When you first heard that trade and kind of going off of Tim's comments there, what did you think of the trade, first of all, and where does this put Minnesota now?
I thought it was a win-win for both teams. The reason why I say that, one, for the Chicago Bulls, they had to start over. I think this is the best offer. I agree with Tim Legler and what he said about this may have been the best offer that they can get. The only thing I don't like about the trade, I don't think the Chicago Bulls should have thrown the number 16 pick. I thought, obviously, getting a 7 pick would have been, in 2 players was good enough. But that's beside the point. But I think with Chicago Bulls, they had to start over. You had to get some young talent. And I have a very close friend, a very good source with the Chicago Bulls, and Tim Legler is actually telling the truth. Jimmy Butler's a young guy killer. He's a very selfish player in the sense that, he comes in, take care of his business. He's a very hard worker. Can't doubt that. His game has improved tremendously since when he got in the league. Actually surprising to me. I've never seen a guy come into the league not able to score the basketball, and now he's one of the more prolific scorers in the league. So he's just a bad locker room guy. A lot of outbursts took place throughout the season with the coaches, with the players, and you're trying to build something, especially in Chicago, and he's going to be your best player. He has to be a leader on and off the court, and he did a poor example of that, and I think that's why the Bulls kind of parted ways with them. For Minnesota, great trade. He's going to give them a guy who can finish late in games. He's a guy that can score the basketball under 2 minutes. They struggle to score the basketball late in fourth quarters. I think he'll be good to take a lot of pressure off Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins so those guys can continue to develop. They just got to improve their bench, but I think Minnesota becomes a playoff team.
Go ahead.
I just think when you add 3 guys like that, all 3 of those guys should be all-stars, so they're headed in the right direction.
Now, Shanae and Antoine, I just want to let you guys know, and everybody else out there know, I am a Warriors fan, grew up, born and raised in Oakland, California. So I understand that some of my bias may come there. I'll try to keep it as unbiased as possible, but I am biased just because.
Well, you won 73 games, and y'all went and got the best player in the league. I mean,
right.
if you feel like that's what you needed to do, you need to do that.
He's on cloud nine.
Well, look, I bring that up because Kevin Durant came over from Oklahoma City to Golden State, and it seems the way that it went out throughout it looks some bumps and bruises early on, but they got into the finals, and it seemed like a seamless transition. But when you look at this trade for Jimmy coming over from Chicago to Minnesota, Shanae, what happens for him? Does he have to change his game? Because you're now going into a team in which now he is the older guy now. He's not going to a team where he's just trying to go to fit in. He may be the leader of a young group with the Anthony Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. Does he change his game, or does he have to fit in?
No, he doesn't have to change his game. He will fit in naturally. I mean, Jimmy Butler reportedly wasn't happy with how things were handled with the trade, right. But that's the end of his unhappiness. One day we're talking about him being the face of the franchise of Chicago. The next, he's the face of the Wolves. But it is a business. We all know that. It's back-to-back years of change for Jimmy, including Dwayne Wade last year. But what promise besides good pizza and support from Chance the Rapper was there for him in Chicago? Now there's real promise with him right. and the Timberwolves. He won't be stepping on anyone's toes. He's young enough of a veteran leader to start right. building something special, and young enough of a veteran to also teach the Wolves' younger players like Towns or Wiggins how to close games, as you suggested. And he also has a coach that believes in him, Coach Thibodeau. Yeah. If you're in the Wolves front office, I think you're doing chest bumps or something like that because you got everything you needed to help this team make the next jump. But if you're in the Bulls front office, you're probably scratching your head because subtracting Jimmy Butler just does not add up.
Yeah, Shanae, I want to stick with that because you mentioned coach, and obviously Tom Thibodeau, who coached him and watched him develop in Chicago. When you go to a team like that, the coach believes in you. Is that sort of like him feeling like, okay, I'm better now. I got out of a bad situation, but I'm back with the guy who believed in me. Does that work more for him?
It definitely does because you look at the year in which he had his best year, and that was under Coach Thibodeau. Right. So you also have a comfort level. When you get to the pros and you know that it's a difficult jump itself, knowing that you have the trust in your coach means everything. And the coach will allow you to be you. So he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. He will just have to play his game. And that's one thing he said. He said, I don't want to be called the face. I just want to be known as a player. Coach Thibodeau knows he's a player that will fit in perfectly. And this is a team, like you said, Antoine, is primed to make a jump in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, I mean, obviously, for Jimmy, it's a great trade. And everything you said is so true about playing for your coach and everything. So my second year in the league, Coach Pitino ended up coming. And obviously being a coach and GM of the Boston Celtics after my rookie year, and I won 15 games my rookie year. So I was excited when he came. I had my best year stat-wise with him, made the All-Star team. Things just really opened up because I was with a coach that obviously that I enjoyed playing for, pretty much favored me in the offense. So it was great for me. So it's going to be great for Jimmy Butler because he's going to be along a coach that believes in him. And another thing that's great about this trade, if you look at these two guys, these three guys, they're kind of two-way players. Jimmy Butler's one of the better two-way players. Andrew Wiggins, we know his ability and athletic ability, how he can be defensively. And Karl Anthony Towns is starting to show that he's going to be a force inside that center. So they got the right pieces in play. So Jimmy should be really happy because he's probably going to make them a playoff team.
You're listening to The Locker Room here on ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today and find out if you could save Progressive Insurance. That's the one thing that, obviously when you make that transition going from one team to another, obviously you have to have some kind of familiarity with the guys who you play with because it's going to be a filling out process. I don't want to just say, and this is where everybody does this, they shoot this team all the way up to, I got them the number 3 team in the West. They got this. And I'm like, let them play a couple games first. You know what I mean? But realistically, really quickly here, though, I mean, in like 10 seconds right now, Antoine, where do you see Minnesota at? Where's a possible finish for them when you add a guy like Jimmy Butler?
I think obviously they gotta add some bench help. They got to get a few veteran guys on that bench to help them out. But right now, just with those big 3 guys, I got them a 5th or 6th seed right now in the Western Conference. You got to figure they're going to surpass Portland. They should be able to compete with OKC. So I got them at a fifth or sixth seed right away, early on.
Yeah, Shanae, I'm going to hold yours. I want you to save that one because I want you to really dive in and let me know, do you think this is a team that can contend with the Warriors and the Spurs over there in the West?
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
We all have been drafted. Yes, we all have something in common. We all have been drafted in our respective sports. Antoine to the NBA, Shanae to the WNBA, and myself to the National Football League. And, you know, as regardless of any draft, and I've told people this all the time, I love watching drafts because people don't understand that emotion of just hearing that name called. And when I watch the young men get their name called on Thursday, it brings me right back to the day that I got drafted and those emotions that kind of go through you. And it feels like, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like my life like flashed before my eyes.
Same.
Like I saw like everything from like, I felt like I saw myself coming out of the womb and all the work and time I put in and all the classes I went to and practices and all that. And then finally it just, boom, it's like the light just struck and I was drafted. And I know you guys have similar stories. And I'll start with you on this one, Shanae, because you were most recently drafted in 2014 after a storied career at Stanford. Your draft day story being taken in the first round by the Connecticut Sun of the WNBA.
Well, I had some drama on my draft day. I actually bonded with Markelle Fultz about it. It seemed like everyone but me knew that I was going one to Connecticut, who had the top pick. But I was a hot mess. So you can't tell draftees anything. They say, oh, you're going to the top 10. Don't believe it. You're anxious. You're nervous. I was pacing around. So the draft was at Mohegan Sun, which is the home of the Connecticut Sun, who had the first pick. And they set up our glam squad where we had hair and makeup done inside the arena. So we could actually hear the ESPN crews practicing for the draft. And I remember I was getting an eyelash put on or something glued on, when from a loudspeaker I heard Rebecca Lobo's voice say, with the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, the Connecticut Sun select Odyssey Sims from the University of Baylor. Like, my heart dropped. I was like, they must be practicing the real thing this close. So when it was time for the real thing, I was a hot mess. 2 years earlier, I was there to see my big sis get drafted number 1 to the Los Angeles Sparks, and it was one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed and been a part of in my life. And I wanted so badly to make history as the only siblings other than the Mannings to both be drafted number 1 in major sports.
Wow.
So my whole family was there. You know, I'm African, Ogwumike. We roll deep. And I was sweating bullets. And there are 5 minutes to go, and then I hear breaking news. Connecticut Sun has made a trade. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I was talking to Markelle about. They traded Tina Charles to the New York Liberty. So I was telling Markelle at least his drama was days before so he could calm down about that. This was 5 minutes before the draft started. So I was still freaking out, close to the point where NECA almost slapped me on the face and said, get your ish together. So those 5 minutes passed, and then finally I hear the words, with the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, the Connecticut Sun select Chiney Ogwumike. And I felt so much relief. Like you said, my life, it flashed before my eyes. It was one of the best moments of my life. To be drafted number 1 in the arena where I would be playing in front of all of our new fans, to make history with my sister, it was like literally perfect. I just wish I didn't stress out so much so I could have enjoyed the draft festivities all week long.
Oh, man, that's amazing. That is great. See, the draft moments, like I said, I'm watching those kids on and I still call them kids. I watch them on Thursday, and I'm like, man, like it does something to me, you know. And Antoine, you had the same situation for you. You spent 2 years at Kentucky, entered the draft, and your draft day moment, your story. Obviously, I think I seen a picture of that suit you had. You still remember the suit you wore that night?
Fresh.
Yeah, I remember that suit. And I picked the right color too, so I got lucky. But no, I mean, obviously I didn't have a glamour squad where I had somebody doing my makeup. And it wasn't as nice as that. But no, I think for me it was a little different because, one, I worked out for 9 teams prior to the draft. You know, you see these guys now where they only work out for 1 team. I worked out for 9 teams. So I felt good. I felt like I worked out for everybody really, really good. Didn't feel bad about any of my workouts. But the draft day, I was just nervous. You know, I had my family up there. I think you're allowed to bring 10 people. So I had my mother, my father, and a couple friends and everybody. So I was just nervous all day because I didn't know where I was going. Working out for 9 teams is crazy. You hear so many stories. And once the draft actually started, we get there, and I'm dealing with my agent. My agent sit behind me. So I can remember my palms really sweating. I'm like, man, look, if I don't go 3 to Vancouver, back in the day, this was when Vancouver had a team. So they were picking 3, and that was one of my better workouts. And they end up, the draft had started, they end up taking Sharif Abdul-Rahim at 3. I'm like, man, I thought that was going to be me. Both of us are kind of similar type players. So I'm like, okay, that's okay. Then now Milwaukee picks, they take, I think Ray Allen went, then Stephon Marbury. And now we get to the Celtics now. The Celtics were picking 9 originally, and they traded up. They traded Eric Montross and the pick to Dallas, picks with Dallas, and they moved up to 6. But the problem was the Celtics was my shortest workout. I worked out for like 20 minutes. So I was like, damn, I'm not going to get drafted by them. You know, because I'm like, I only worked out for 20 minutes, and then they wanted to interview me. So I didn't know what to expect. And, you know, luckily I got drafted by the Celtics, and then my whole life changed. Kind of same thing, you know, Kirk, what you talked about in the beginning. My life just changed. I started really, I ain't going to be honest with you, I started thinking about all the things that I can buy and do. You know, I started thinking about that. I was like, man, what that, you know, it was a hard cap then, too. I think it's still a rookie scale. So I'm like, okay, I'll make 1.6 this year. Okay, all right. Oof. I started thinking about those type of moments when I went up there. But obviously it was a special time in my life for me and my family. I came from a single-family home, being the oldest, and in that moment I'll never forget to be able to hug my mom and be like, man, we finally made it.
You listen to The Locker Room here on ESPN Radio. I'm Kirk Morrison. I was Antoine Walker and Chiney Ogwumike with us as well. My story, obviously, a little bit different. I had to wait a couple more rounds than you guys did. You know, obviously, you guys were in the first. In 2005, I got drafted in the 3rd round by the Oakland Raiders. And I think my situation was a little bit different and unique was that in 1996, my mom, she went to the Atlanta Olympics. And on her way back, flying from Atlanta back to California, she said she experienced the worst airplane turbulence she'd ever experienced before. And she vowed never to take a plane ever again. She was like, I'm done. And so I went to San Diego State for college. So the trip from from Oakland to San Diego, where I was born and raised, she took the bus, a 10-hour bus ride to every one of my home games. It was just a ritual. She left Thursday night. She would call me and say, hey, I'm taking off. And she would leave at 10 p.m. on Thursday night and arrive at 8 a.m. on Friday morning. I always thought it was like the way that she made sure I didn't go out on Thursday night in college. You know what I mean? Because she was like, oh, you're going to get up and pick me up at 8 a.m. I'm like, Mom, but you know, Thursday night, it was like the weekend. That's like a Friday in college. But no, because so basically she did that for, you know, my 4 years at San Diego State. And it was, you know, I know it was hard on her, but she was like, I have to be there for my boy. I had to be there for my boy. I want to make sure that I'm always there. That's a 10-hour bus ride. I'm just like, dude, I hate it when I'm in a car for more than 30 minutes, let alone a 10-hour ride. And when the draft came around, I was just kind of sitting there. I was pacing around. I had some teams in mind that I thought I was going to go to based on, like you mentioned, Antoine, it was those workouts. You're like, man, I got these workouts set up, and I had some good meetings, and I just had a good feeling of where I thought I was going to get drafted. So the 2nd round comes, and the team that I thought was going to draft me, they drafted my teammate. And so now I'm still waiting here. I'm sweating. I'm uncomfortable. And this is where the draft this is back in 2005. Remember, the first 3 rounds were all in one day. So the draft started at like 9 a.m. on Pacific time, and it went all the way into like 8 p.m. So I'm waiting literally all day, just waiting on the phone to ring. And I got out of there where I was at the place I was at watching the draft. And I remember about 6 o'clock, the 3rd round, and I knew the Raiders had a pick in the 3rd round. And right before they were about to draft, I saw that private number pop up on my phone. And I was scared, man. I was like, uh-oh, you know, who is this? And because they weren't on the clock yet. I picked up that phone call, and I always remember just the voice on the other end. It was the secretary, and she said, hi, is this Kirk Morrison? I said, yes, this is. She was like, yeah, Coach North Turner's on the other line. Can you hold for a second? I said, yeah. And I remember him telling me He said, hey, we're about to pick you or something. I don't know. I think your name is going to come up on that screen or something there. You ready? And I'm just like, he was so nonchalant about it. But here I am. I'm like, I'm frozen. Like, I'm numb because this is like the moment I waited for my entire life. And then when I saw my name go across that screen, just the emotion, the tears that came down, because the first thing I thought about was my mom went from a 10-hour bus ride to a 10-minute trip to go see me play football. And that was just emotion enough for me. So that was my draft story. Hope I didn't get too sappy on y'all. But,
no, that was beautiful.
That was my draft
well, Kirk,
story.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
For football, was totally different. Obviously, in basketball, everything happens in one day. How was that process of having to wait, like a couple of days before your name is called? Is it the second day? Like, how's that process? I always wondered that, watching the football draft, and I know it's 7 rounds and just sitting around waiting. How was that process?
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
My whole career I've always been, kind of the people's champ in the locker room.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This is the Locker Room Podcast.
I started this segment just talking about some of the discussion on the one and done in college basketball. And this week, head coach Mike Krzyzewski of Duke was on Mike and Mike, and he talked about some of those instances where a guy, should they go straight from high school to the NBA, or should they spend a couple years in college? Here's Mike Krzyzewski this week.
What everyone has done up to now has been great. They look out for the game, but it's not been coordinated between the NBA and college. And you bring up a great point about high school kids, like in baseball, actually in theater and music. If you're 16 and you're really good, you go on a different path. I really think that high school players should be allowed to go, and once they get to college, if you don't do that, I think a 2-year period. So you legitimize being in college, going for an education. You don't just kind of use the college system as a training ground. And but what you also do is and what Adam Silver has done, really good changes going on with the development league, and now going from 15 to 17 guys, where we have these two-way contracts. And I think each NBA team, they should be responsible for having a minor league affiliate, a development league, and where these kids could go in and you could train them. I mean, a kid who's really, really good coming out of high school, who does not want to go to school, would gain more from being in a pro system where he is working on his craft and his body and the development every day.
Yeah, that's Mike Krzyzewski right there on Mike and Mike this week, giving us his thoughts on high school players going straight to the NBA or doing 2 years in college. That's Mike Krzyzewski's take, but here's John Calipari, Kentucky head coach, during the NBA draft and the ESPN coverage that we had this week. Here's John Calipari letting us know that the one and done is still not broken.
But see, for a lot of these guys, Jay, everything has come easy until they went to college. What I would call for some of these kids a nice gap year. They're talking about one and done. It's not broken. It isn't broken. My kids finished the term. They're on lifetime scholarships. Can I recruit a little bit?
But Antoine, I'm gonna lean on you for this one though, because you spent 2 years at Kentucky before being drafted. I'll just throw a couple other sports out there. Baseball. You either in college baseball, which they're having the College World Series right now on ESPN, but you can go either way. You can go straight from high school and sign a minor league contract, or if you elect to go play college baseball, you have to be there for 3 seasons. We know with college football, you come from high school, you have to be 3 years removed from high school. 3 football seasons removed from high school to be eligible for the NFL draft. The NBA, you only have to be 1 year or 1 college basketball season removed. You did 2 years, Antoine. Where do you see the NBA possibly going Do you like the one and done, or should it be 2 years or straight out of high school?
I like what Coach K said. I think, obviously, I like the guys being able to come out of high school. I think if you're going to come out, I think going to school for 9 months is not going to help you. So I think if you're going to come out, go ahead and come on out and give yourself a chance to develop and get on that pro circuit right away. But if you do have to go to college, I do like the 2-year rule, and this is the reason why. When I came into college, I was 190 pounds, soaking wet. I was skinny, could just all bones. And I left after my second year. I was 232 pounds. So I gave myself a chance for my body to develop. I wasn't ready, obviously, with my body, but my game was not there to be able to play in the NBA. So by me going to school for 2 years, it gave me a chance to, one, work on my body, improve my game, and also become 2 years, get 2 years of education, closer to me getting my degree so I can have something to fall back on. But I think if you're going to come out, you got to let it come out of high school. And if you have to go to school, I think it should be 2 years. So I'm in complete compliance with what Coach K say. That's how it should be. And obviously, I only can speak from my example of how it helped me being able to go to school for 2 years. But your body's just not ready at 17 years old, 18 years old to go into the league and play. And there's some guys that are going to be exceptions to the rule. Usually the guys that play in the McDonald's All-American game are the ones that we usually see. And I think this year's draft kind of let us know that those guys that kind of play in that game, or the guys that are ranked in the top 20, are going to get drafted in the lottery. And you saw, 16 first-round draft picks be freshmen. So I think it's either high school or go to school for 2 years. I do like that.
Shanae, obviously you spent 4 years at Stanford and got drafted number 1 overall. The maturity factor for when you got to the WNBA is there. I want to hold that for a second, just because I want you to kind of talk about your experience, because you're sort of different than the guys, because you see so many guys come out early. Or when I watch the women play, their game is more mature right away, especially when they get to the WNBA.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Is the one and done in college basketball? Is it good for the game? Is high school basketball players, should they be allowed to go straight to the NBA? We've been taking your phone calls on that. Let's go right back to the phone lines. Let's go to Douglas in Phoenix. Douglas is listening on 98.7 FM. What's up, Douglas?
Good morning. How y'all doing, fellas?
Yeah.
And ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I wanted to touch on what you guys talking about this morning. You wouldn't believe it if I said it, but a week ago I posted a video on YouTube discussing this exact topic. I agree with Antoine Walker. Go to school 2-3 years mandatory. If you want to go one and done out of high school, I think the NBA should hold like an open tryout against G League players or Summer League players, and have scouts there to scout these players and see if they're good enough. If the scouts tell the NBA, oh yeah, prospect A, B, and C, they're good. D, E, and F, no, they need to go to college. I think that's what the NBA should do. I mean, it's just my opinion, but what do you guys think about it?
Okay.
Thank you for taking my call.
I'm going to steal it just for a quick second before I hand it over to Shanae and Antoine, but I'll tell you this. I'm going to take the agent's perspective on there. Here I am. I have a guy, coming out of high school. He's 6'9", about 230 pounds, swing man, can play small forward, can do all that. I don't want him going out there working out for anybody else or any other team. I want to have his film and what he's done already and make you say, this is what you want to mold. This is what you want to bring to your organization, and you show him what you need him to do rather than putting him out there, and that's how kids' stocks drop. So I'm telling you, from an agent perspective, if I'm an agent, I'm not letting my kid go out there and work out against some other NBA, D-League guys or guys on the fringe. I just couldn't do that. Antoine, would you allow them to do that?
Well, I like the way he's talked about, which is tough. I think the process should be, and I think they do it already now to a certain extent where guys get to put their name in the draft and then go back. But I think it should be a time period where if I'm a high school kid and I put my name in the draft, I should have, a month or 2 months to work out for NBA teams, go through the full process, and have a decision to make. Should I stay in the draft or should I not? Because when you're in high school, it's going to let you know right away, if I'm not ready for this. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be ready. but I want to at least go through the process to see the work that it's going to take for me to get to that level. So I think it's going to be the NCAA and the NBA coming up with, some type of, decision that, hey, I can work out for X amount of days, see if I can, cut it. If not, because I think the guys on the fringe is the ones that are going to benefit from that, because I look at so many guys, this year that did not get drafted, that left their name in the draft, and now they got to go try to make a summer league roster, and they may not make it to the NBA. So I think I do agree with the caller. It should be some type of, workout thing where you can get a really good look at it to see if you really can make it for the fringe guys. I think the top 5 or 6 guys, we're always going to know them.
I completely agree, honestly.
Yeah, how was that process for you, though, Chiney? Because we hear about what the NBA guys or one-and-done guys have to do, but when you had this storied career at Stanford and then you're coming out for the WNBA, did you have to work out for many WNBA teams, or just one? Is it just 2? Because you guys not only play women, you've been playing not just college basketball, but you've been on some of the world teams and the under 18 and unders and the 19 and unders. So there's a way to look at and evaluate your game.
Yeah, there are combines too as well, and draft camps for the women, and I completely agree. I think if there are players in high school that want to go pro, I think there should be, like you said, Antoine, a safety net for them as well, because you mentioned that the NBA allows guys to go back to school, which is a safety net. There needs to be a safety net for those guys after they work out, hopefully, and they realize, okay, maybe this is not the time for me. They can go seamlessly to college and maybe play for 1 or 2 years. And you're talking about my experience as a woman, I had the skill to be successful because college prepared me.
Right.
Because the intensity in which these grown women play with every possession, the no room for errors or you get exposed type of game, it's bigger and faster and stronger. I wasn't ready for that coming out of high school. But to me, the most important thing is at college, it gives you a great opportunity to prepare. And the most important part is that it teaches you how to become an adult, which is some skills that allow you to be successful after you make some money in the pros. And you learn how to balance your schedule, treat a bigger fan base with respect. You learn your strengths and weaknesses. In college, it didn't just remind me who I am, it taught me who I wanted to be. And young men can experience that, whether it is going pro. But just in case, like you said, they're on the fringe, there does need to be a safety net. So I think having synergy from the high school to collegiate to the pro level is important.
Where do you get that guidance from, though? You know what I mean? Like Antoine, who was there a person that you leaned on? Because I'm just going back for me, I wasn't a highly decorated recruit coming out of high school, or when the NFL came, I didn't have 5 or 6 people trying to, be my marketing guy, my publicist guy, and all this. You know what I mean? And so I look at, sometimes it's also what I look at during the draft. I see the entourage, the people who are with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? You see, the people who try to help make decisions for you. Who was that person for you? I'll start with you on this one, Chiney. Who was the person that you leaned on to help you make some of these decisions?
Well, I'm lucky because I have a big sister who went through the fire. So literally everything she did, I was like, I want to do that too. And she said, all right, I'm going to show you how. But that's why I always push on the college experience, because a lot of times we're talking about people might come from different situations, as the caller alluded to.
Right. Well,
when you go to college, you have another parental type figure in your coach. And you look at the great programs, and you look at the Calipari's and Mike Krzyzewski's. They're parental figures that help guide and mold these players that come into college into men. You always hear about them saying, we have real men that we've developed, not just on the court, but off. So for high school kids, like you said, there are entourages. You have a lot of day ones that are with you. And it's harder to navigate that process when you don't have that infrastructure that college sort of prepares you with. It's like a microcosm of the pros. So creating, like you said, like we alluded to, safety nets so that these guys don't slip through the cracks. Antoine, you mentioned that life happens. Sometimes people get injuries. Right. You can't predict the future, but you have to accept as much guidance as you can. So there has to be, I think that's the thing. The NCAA, it's done a good job in trying to, maximize the college players while they get them, but they also need to make sure that there's a safety net, there's a fallback for those players that are trying to change their lives. But if something doesn't work out, okay, you're in this pipeline where you have your best chance to be successful.
Well, like for me, and real quick to share a story, like I stayed 2 years, so we win the national championship in '96. We win the championship, and the following year, all the publications come out, and everybody's like, okay, myself, Tim Duncan and Keith Van Horn are going to be the top 3 next picks for 1997 draft. So I'm like, man, I mean, and this is what we talk about, the guidance. So, obviously I got friends that they watch the game like, man, you can go pro now. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think I'm going to come back. And I really enjoyed college. Like, I was having the best time of my life. I don't know if many of you guys been to Lexington, Kentucky, but
Lex Vegas.
I don't know if you. Yes, there you go. We was having a great time there. I mean, you're treated like a professional athlete already down there. So I wasn't necessarily in a rush to go pro. So I was like, you know what? Let me just see this. So for me, my guidance, I called Sonny Vaccaro. At that time, he was the main guy at Adidas as far as bringing in the athletes. And I said, Sonny, hey, listen, I'm thinking about going pro. And like Sonny, if anybody that knows Sonny Vaccaro, he says, listen, Twan, I don't tell kids to come out of school early, but I'll make some phone calls for you. So he made some phone calls for me, came back and said, hey, Twan, you'll be a first round pick, but I'm not advising you to come out. I'm like, all right, cool. So right away, I called my mom, like, Mom, I'm making go pro. And obviously she don't know. She like, well, I don't know. If it makes you happy, do it. So I go call Coach Patino and say, Coach, I'm thinking about going pro. And one thing I always respect about Coach, and he was great to me, and we're still good friends. He said, listen, give me 24 hours. Went to his house for dinner after 24 hours. He said, listen, I'm letting you come out. He was like, you need to come out. You're going to go in the first round. You're going to be a lottery pick. And then he took over my process for me. He was like, look, I'm going to help you pick an agent. You're going to stay down here and work out with our trainers, and you're going to get ready for the draft. And that was a beautiful thing. So he was the one guy that I leaned on, and everybody don't have that, but it's the college coaches, the people that your parents have sent you to, and put basically your young life in their hands. So you got to have somebody. Yeah. And actually, my boys just bother me talking about, man, you should come out, made me look into it. So I mean, it's tough if you don't have somebody like a college coach or a mother and father, like you had your sister to help you out, to help you guide you through this process.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
My whole career I've always been, kind of the people's champ in the locker room.
This is The Locker Room Podcast.
This week marks the 45th anniversary of Title IX being passed into law. The one thing when you hear about Title IX, people aren't familiar with, okay, Title IX, it's been that long, but Title IX speaks to all of us, especially to women. I want to play a piece before we get into this discussion. Deborah Larkin of the Women's Sports Foundation, she was on with the Trifecta, and she talked about what the impact of Title IX has been to college athletes.
We have shown the value of sports just for playing sports, the fun, but really importantly to the society, the education, health, and leadership benefits that girls get from sports. And Title IX is the law that will get them there. What we learned is that only 10% of college students are explicitly spoken to about Title IX. 83% of coaches are not spoken to about Title IX. So the awareness levels are woefully low. I'm really excited to tell you that the foundation just started a new game. It's called Play 9, and it is directed to high school and college athletes to raise their awareness levels. It's going to be presented where they live, which is on platforms of Facebook Messenger and Kik. And we're talking about issues that they face every day of the inequities or the possible inequities about Title IX. And we've been piloting the program, and the students are saying, wow, I didn't know this. And thanks, this is a fun way for learning about it. This is engaging to me, and I can go in and talk to my coach or the AD and see if this really is a Title IX infraction, and if so, how can we eliminate it?
Obviously Title IX has impacted all of us, but Shanae Ogwumike, when you hear Title IX and what it's been not just for you but for women, athletes, sports in general, what are some of your takeaways and your thoughts on it?
So my big sis and I had the opportunity to participate in an NCAA commercial, or better yet, PSA. I'm not sure if y'all have seen it. And this PSA essentially celebrates this anniversary year for Title IX. And we closed the PSA saying, genders don't play sports. Athletes do.
Right.
And I've been fortunate to reap the benefits of Title IX. There's always been a WNBA. There's always been an opportunity to play overseas for me. But when I think of Title IX, I think about my college coach, who, as Deborah Larkin just alluded to, taught me about awareness. I played for Hall of Fame coach Tara Vanderveer.
Right.
And the most important thing she taught me during my experience at Stanford was respect. Respect the game and respect each other. Why? Because we're all fortunate for our opportunities. And people tend to forget that Coach Tara herself, she used to play back in the day. After she played in college at Indiana, she went back home and thought, okay, let me pursue a degree in law. Well, life happens. Her sister's high school basketball team, their coach had to take an extended absence, so she stepped in. And by that time, she got experience coaching basketball, girls athletics. There were opportunities available through Title IX. So she would always tell us that without Title IX, she may not have had the opportunity to coach at Stanford for over 30 years now. And now she's in the Hall of Fame. And there's a domino effect to Title IX. Through one change, many other opportunities flourish. Coach Tara has been a major influence in many people's lives, like mine, my sisters. There's Jennifer Azey, Val Whiting, Charlie Turner-Thonger coaches at ASU, and even Lisa Leslie, as Coach Tara coached in the Olympics. So Title IX gave opportunities to women, and those opportunities are met exponentially. And it's become a part of my DNA. I'm Nigerian American, as my name alludes to. And the African patriarchal system has not reached a point to really sustain female athletics. When I started playing basketball, my parents' contemporaries, their African friends that we grew up with in the city of Houston, would say, oh, your girls should be studying or playing, doing stuff that refine themselves for the future. Well, let me tell you, those same parents that were saying your girl shouldn't be bouncing the ball, they're putting their kids in sports because they see that scholarships open doors and can transform your lives. So Title IX has a trickle-down effect through opportunities. And this started, like you said, people don't know, it was 45 years ago. So the young generation doesn't have that awareness. But as women's basketball players, it's on us to really tell the story, as Larkin mentioned. And it's transformed my life. It's transformed my coach at Stanford's life. And it's on us to pay it forward.
Was that a 302 course or a 202 course you just gave right now?
No.
I'm sitting here taking notes over here.
I got to raise my hand and say I'm one of the guys that did not know about Title IX. And obviously just listening to you, it's actually breathtaking to hear it from someone that's actually being involved in it. But, early in the week when we said we was going to talk about it on the show, I started to look at it and I was like, man, having a daughter now that just signed with Northwestern University, and she's going to play volleyball, and she got a 4-year ride to go there. How blessed and fortunate I am as a father. I just feel, it made me feel very special and not take this opportunity for granted. And it's something that when I'm going to sit down with my daughter and talk to her about, to not take this for granted and to make sure that she, embrace this moment and do whatever she can, obviously, for herself individually, but also enjoy her college experience and understand why she's getting a chance to enjoy this college experience. So it's great knowledge for me to learn this. And, like I said, having a daughter that's in the, that's now in that, female sport and got a free ride, more importantly, got that scholarship to be able to go to a great university like Northwestern with the great education background that they have.
And the one thing now, and Chiney, how so forward-thinking that we are now, I think, in society and what Title IX has presented. I look at the San Antonio Spurs and the coach in which they have on their roster, Becky Hammond. That was not possible 10 years ago. Just think about, we're talking 2 years ago. We're talking about Title IX's been around for 45 years, and 2 years ago, like you mentioned, or 5 years ago, 10 years, that was unheard of to have a woman assistant coach. She's there, and she's done a great job. Last year, she was the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs Summer League team. I even go as far as, for me, and I'm going to my playing career in here as an Oakland Raider, one of the the highest ranking woman official in the NFL was one Amy Trask. And Amy Trask right now, she's the actually CEO of the Big Three basketball league that'll be debuting today. And so just watching her in a position of power, and it's through athletics. She never really played a college sport, but you saw a woman in a position of power. You're like, okay, she means business. And you're like, okay, Title IX, I think, brought all of that now. That it's more about the acceptance of. You know what I mean? Before it was like, oh, she's just a woman or this and that. Like, no, it's women and the acceptance of them able to not only be athletes, but also to have major, powerful roles within sports. And I think that's what we're starting to see today, because you see it all around. I mean, I mentioned basketball, but we even tonight, I did the promo a little bit earlier about baseball tonight and the Cardinals versus the Pirates tonight. But we know Jessica Mendoza, she'll be speaking tonight. She's one of the broadcasters. That was just unheard of 2 years ago, and now that's how forward thinking we are now, and it's so accepting, and that's all because of Title IX.
And Beth Mowens is going to be the first play-by-play.
Yes.
Is it for Oakland or the 49ers? One of the teams in the Bay.
Yeah, she'll be doing it for Monday Night Football.
Yep.
I believe. Yeah, the Monday Night Football. She gets to do the second game, I believe, of the doubleheader on Monday night of the opening weekend of the NFL. So now Beth Mowens, like you mentioned, this is just where we are now. It's like it's crazy to think that 5 years ago or 15, 20 years, you would never even heard of that. And now where we are today, it's still improving. It's still more that can still come from it. But obviously the strides that we've made in just recent years have been, I applaud where I think sports is going because of Title IX.
And I want to jump in there. I just got a text from my high school coach. Her name is Pearl Ann Rabique. Her name is really Ann, but we call her Pearl.
All right. Coach Pearl.
Yeah,
all right,
Coach
what's
Pearl.
up?
And she's just texted me. I'm in Louisiana driving and turn on ESPN and hear you talking about Title IX. And, she has been a huge influence on my life.
Right.
And so it's a sisterhood, honestly, but we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
Absolutely.
Coach Ann Rabique, who's driving through Louisiana, is one of the many women. Like you said, Amy Trask, she started as an intern for the Oakland Raiders and worked her way up. These women aren't just getting placed at the top. They're finding their niches, and then through Title IX, opportunities are created for them to succeed. So shout out to Pearl Ann Rabique. We won 2 state championships out of Cypress, Texas with her. And she's one of the women that got me where I am today. And she understood the benefits of Title IX, played baller back in her day. And then she taught me that awareness as well.
Uh-huh. I want to thank you. You just made me understand how important Title IX is, too. So, just the way you explained it was humbled me and let me understand how important Title IX was.
Yeah, it is very important, and it's still more work that could be done. It's still improving, but man, where we've come in just the last 4 or 5 years, and the faces of women now being seen on some of the biggest stages, and not just collegiate athletics, but also in professional athletics. Definitely, my hats off to everyone involved in moving forward with that.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Paul George told the Indiana Pacers brass, the general manager Kevin Pritchard, and also Larry Bird, that he will not basically want to play for the Indiana Pacers next year. He's ready to move on, and he sort of hinted that he wanted to set his sights on Los Angeles. Now, we know that there were some trade opportunities between the Boston Celtics, got in the mix, also the Cleveland Cavaliers. But to me, here's a guy that is not being ridiculed. He's doing it right. He said, I enjoyed my time in Indiana, but I'm ready to move on. So basically, if you want to trade me, get something valuable and move on, but I don't want to play here. Is this sort of the route that you think that LeBron James may have done, he should have done at the time?
No, I don't think. I think that it would have been nice for LeBron to do it, because now you get the team a chance to move on or maybe trade you. But LeBron wanted to control his own destiny. Right. That's why he kept it very private and had the whole big decision thing. I think what Paul George did, it's cool. It's nice as a guy that if you play for an organization that's embraced you. They drafted you and gave you your start, so he wanted to pay respects to them. I understand that aspect of it. But the problem is, and if I'm Indiana Pacers, the business side is I'm not in the rush to trade you until I can get full value back. Right. So that's the problem. And then you can get traded to any team. So I think he kind of put his foot in his mouth by kind of letting them know he wanted to be a Laker. He wanted to go to L.A. I think he probably should have just been like, listen, the direction of the team is not going where I want it. I'm going to probably try to move on at free agent time. You should have never told them that you want to go to L.A. because they're going to do everything in their power not to send you to L.A.
Right.
So I think he kind of put his foot in his mouth. with that
or
a
make
little
them
bit.
pay that ransom. You know, I mean, that's a big ransom that they want LA to have to pay. But Chiney, he can't go back to Indiana, right? It's like because they're nobody's upset. They're not burning jerseys. Oh, you know, Paul George a traitor. Why would you? He's just telling them, hey, look, I had a good time. I'm ready to move on. Is that what I think all players should do or should be able to do?
I think it's respectful of his camp, but at the same time, you've given all your cards to your team that still owns you. And now, like you said earlier, the Lakers, I mean, it sounds attractive, but your team might do everything possible not to get you there. But hopefully, I'm hoping that there's a mutual agreement that happens so that it could be best for Indiana. They can get their full value, and PG can end up where he wants to go. And you look at the Lakers, I mean, I hope he goes there because everyone talks about them winning the draft because they got Lonzo. But Magic, in his first pretty much major move, sends D'Angelo Russell and Mozgov out east, and that clears cap space for them to be more attractive. So maybe I see potential for a mutual agreement between those two teams. Now, you don't want to show anybody. People play poker. You don't want to show anybody your cards. But at the same time, I see potential for this working out for all parties down the road.
Yeah, but you got to realize, too, like Magic did that, too. 2018, the best player in the league will be a free agent. He will opt out his deal.
Russell Westbrook?
LeBron James will opt out his deal. Paul George will be a free agent. So he's clearing cap space, and he's probably trying to put together a scenario like a Pat Riley, a guy who mentored him in Magic, and trying to put together a scenario where he can convince those two guys to come play alongside each other and try to do something in L.A. So I think that's another thing you got to think about. But for Paul George, I think obviously I like the fact that he was very humble to the organization and letting them know that he's not going to sign back as a free agent. But like Chiney say, they hold all the cards. They may decide not to trade. You may have to come to training camp. What if he has to play all the way to trade deadline? He may have to do that. They may wait. That's going to be awkward. That's going to be crazy that he does it. They may make him wait.
I'm going to date you, but then we're going to break up around February, so don't worry about it.
I mean, you heard Kevin Pritchard, the GM. He was like, listen, I'm not in a rush. I don't have to rush and trade him right now. We can wait. They can wait all the way to the trade deadline. Yeah. So that's the only thing that's bad about it. But, you know, I do give him his camp and his props and to his agent for letting him know. I think an organization that's taken care of him and embraced him, and obviously the city of Indiana, supported him. So I think he definitely did the right thing by letting them know early.
Yeah, our own Dan Le Batard, ESPN radio host of the Dan Le Batard show, he had a take on it this week, saying there is no good way for a player to just say, hey, I want to leave the team.
I've seen all the ways that everyone has tried to leave, and it's never been the right way. Whether it's LeBron hosting a television show or Carmelo largely being quiet while telling the Nuggets, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, but being publicly quiet where he wasn't saying those things publicly. They didn't have his words on it. There is no getting this right. If you leave a fan base where you were sort of homegrown, that fan base is going to feel betrayed. And it doesn't matter how you deliver the news.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how you deliver the news, but I wish people had a camera on when a guy got traded, how you feel. I've been traded before, okay? I know what it feels like. In 2010, I was traded from the Oakland Raiders. Now, I did demand a trade, so it was different because I had spent 5 years with the Raiders. I was a leading tackler for 5 seasons. We come down to the draft. They select a linebacker in the first round, number 8 overall, and they draft him. We play the same position, and people was rumors and people were speculating that they would put him on the outside and then I would play inside, but they would move him to the inside at some point. And I was just of the impression that, look, I've been in this business for 5 years. I've seen guys come and go. When you draft a guy that high, he's there to play. And I said I didn't want to be a part of that process. I said I wanted to be traded. The next day, I was traded. And when I was traded, you got to understand, they put your stuff in a box. It ain't like, oh, you go in and you shake hands and say, oh, appreciate the time and best of luck. No, I didn't say best of luck to the Raiders. I'm like, dude, I'm done with y'all. I was through with them for a while. My job now was on another team to beat the Raiders. Okay, and the other 2 teams that I did play for in the National Football, we did beat the Raiders every time after that. But anyway, they put my stuff in the box. You know what I mean? Like all the memories and all that stuff. When a guy, walks away, they want to burn his jersey, things like that. But when a team trades you, They put your stuff in a nice little box, tape it up, and say, thanks for your time, appreciate it, and move on. You've been traded before, Antoine. What was your experience with that?
It was terrible, man. My first time. So the Celtics drafted me, 96, played my first 7 years there. And in 2003, a new ownership group came in and bought the team. And then obviously they hired Danny Ainge as the GM. And we get to play our last preseason game at the Mohegan Sun. And I'm driving back after the game, and my agent calls and says, hey, you just got traded. I'm like, what? I'm thinking I'm going to spend the rest of my life in Boston, my rest of my career there. We're building something. We just started making the playoffs on a consistent basis. Me and Paul had a pretty good dual relationship going. We were, one of the top scoring duos in the league. So I'm thinking everything is going right. They're going to put some pieces around us. And I get that phone call and I'm traded. And me and Danny Ainge had the war of words in the newspapers, on the phone when he traded me. I mean, we was going at it. And I could not understand why he traded me. I was like, why are you trading me? I'm like one of the cornerstone pieces right now of rebuilding this. And I took it real hard, and it was a very humbling situation because you got 48 hours to report. It ain't like you got time to do. You got to pack your bag. You got to get there in 48 hours for this trade to go down. So I ended up getting traded to Dallas and, ended up playing with Dirk and Steve Nash and Mike, which was a great experience. So, but it's tough when you get traded. I mean, I got traded twice like that right before the first game. With the Heat, I got traded right before the first game to Minnesota. And let me tell you something. It ain't nice going from a team that's on TV 40 times during the regular season to Minnesota where it's minus 10 below and you win 10 games. This is not a good feeling.
From South Beach to Lake Minnetonka.
It's not a good feeling.
Thanks for listening to the Locker Room Podcast. Make sure to subscribe by clicking the Listen tab on the ESPN app.